I don't know.
We'll get started.
She's like, but I'm not happy. She's like, but I'm not going to have to have that. She's like, where are they? She's like, how do you
Oh, no.
That's hard. And your heart is she was the one in the house. Casey was now but people go to her. Sometimes they want to not. So I every day understand grace, like realistic. Kind of like I know you so she's like, what do you want me to do? I want to do and then that's like, you don't shut down who you are, you won't have to know it. So.
Creating the moving Bible.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the act. Because she said that she had to reason service. She's like, she was gone the entire month. And that's not her kids were like, she was gone. She's like, I'm surprised she never got one. So. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then the hard thing is like and they have come to prior to she was there before they come to me kind of we feel really this is not our process, this is her process, you know. So then we can promise next year we'll do 4-week cycles, switch dates cheaper, so that we get everybody because everyone has to, but that's next year. Sure. Yeah.
Okay, good evening, students, lots of students and parents and neighbors and educators to the March meeting of the Bennington Board of Education. I got my clock set right from the time change, so it's 6 o'clock. We do have a quorum, and so I will call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. This meeting is conducted under the provisions of Nebraska's Open Meetings Act, which is posted in the back of the room. We always start our meetings with public forum. So in a moment, I'll call for those who want to address the board. Just a reminder on how we conduct public forum. This is the public's time to share with the board whatever is on their mind. There's a 5-minute limit for each person who wishes to address the board in public forum. At the outset here, I will say thank you for your comments. The board typically does not engage in Q&A. So just so you have that expectation, we do appreciate your comments, but in the interest of making sure that people have equal time and that we're not opening topics that aren't on the agenda, again, the board typically does not engage in Q&A. So if you are interested in addressing the board, we ask that you fill one of these out and give to the board secretary. We'll ask you to come up here so we can see and hear you clearly. And with that, I have one person who'd like to address the board, and that is Tyler Blake.
I didn't get applause. So the only question that
If you wouldn't mind sitting so that we can kind of hear you on the mic. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So the only question that I had is, there was recently a training that went on Friday, I believe it was an in-service day. And I was wondering if that training was going to be made available to the public. And then also, just so I know, is that something that's decided on by the board for those trainings, or how is that set up? So I don't know if you guys can answer those questions, but if there is, and you guys are going to be emailing it to the parents, that'd be great, or if there's something that I have to inquire with an email to the board. So that's all I have.
Tyler, thank you. We don't engage in a Q&A, but have logged your questions and we'll make sure you get answers to those.
Awesome.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming up, John.
Is there anybody else who would like to address the board this evening? Hearing none, we will move then from public forum to our consent agenda, which includes the approval of the agenda for this meeting, minutes of the last meeting, presentation of March bills, resignations, and hiring of personnel. I believe Allison and Heather had bills this evening. Anything of note?
Thank you, yes. Heather and I had bills this month. We do rotate, so each month I always review the bills, and then someone else from the board also engages in that task. So we reviewed the bills this month. The one item I wanted to note, in particular, thanks to Booster Club, we did make our down payment to Daktronics for the video scoreboard at the high school, which I know everyone's excited about. So I know the board's already approved that, just wanted to highlight that one item.
There are no other comments. I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda with items as listed.
I'll second.
Thank you, Valerie, and a second by Kara. Jody, please call the roll.
Kara,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes,
Allison,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Valerie.
Yes.
motion carries. Now we'll move to our administrator reports, and we'll always kick off with elementary. And as you come up, make sure you're telling folks who you are.
Good evening. My name is Therese Nelson, and I'm the principal at Heritage Elementary. In our elementary board report, our highlight really is our kindergarten roundup. We have our parent meeting scheduled for Thursday, March 24th at 5:30. And then we will have our student roundup in the first couple of days of August, very similar to what we did last year. Any questions that you might have? All right, thank you.
Thank you. On to the middle school report.
Thank you. My name is Sean Hoppus. I'm the middle school principal. Just to highlight a couple items up here. We had our Hexter 4 Achievement Celebration, March 3rd. That was for kids with A's and B's. 450 students qualified for that, so that was an exciting time in our building. And then girls basketball and wrestling wrapped up last week, so we had really good seasons for those two programs. Track is starting, which is always a big thing in our middle school. We'll have close to 200 kids that will go out, which we love. So Mr. Wilson's been doing a great job as our athletic director this year. As I was driving in tonight, I think we've had 2 years of uninterrupted sports at the middle school through COVID and everything. And so a lot of credit goes to Mr. Wilson and the work he's done with our activity programs. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Hoppus. Our high school report is next.
Matt Bloomington, high school principal. I've gotten into a pretty good habit of carrying down trophies this year from one of our students that have achieved at the high school. I had more trophies than hands this month. We were awarded the Sportsmanship Award at the state basketball championship this last week. The glass trophy to your right is one of our 2 dance championship trophies from a few weeks ago at the state dance championship. We also won the wrestling individual championship as well. We have some students who are in the crowd that are either part of those teams or our individual state wrestling championships. Will you stand up and be recognized right now? Dance team? Our cheerleaders were also second at the state cheer competition in one of their divisions as well. So it's been a really exciting month for us up at the high school as far as activities are going. In the near future, we have Shrek the Musical this weekend at the high school on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. 2 shows on Sunday, and we will have prom at A View on State on April 2nd with post-prom to follow at the high school from, I believe, 11:30 till early in the morning. So, those are the things that I have right now. Questions that I could answer? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bloomington. Student Services is next.
Whitney Fagan, Director of Student Services. So on page 1 is just kind of a highlight of some of the larger professional development opportunities we've had this year. We thank the Board of Education for supporting those in the student service world. Second page, tomorrow we have a very exciting meeting. We have our ESSA Federal Grant Monitoring Visit from the Department of Education in the afternoon. So hopefully that goes well, and I'll probably give you a little blurb about that in the next board report. And then kind of tagging on to Dr. Bloomington's state championship excitement. We did have a student who got to qualify in the unified swimming meet, and Josie Saunders, an 11th grader at our high school, and she got 2nd place in that competition this year. So congratulations to her.
So, thank you. Curriculum and instruction.
Good evening, Dee Hoagie, Assistant Superintendent. Tonight's report, I want to highlight for you assessment. We are moving into the state assessment cycle that we need to complete each year. All students in grades 3 through 8 and our 11th graders participate in state testing. That window opens March 21st. Our juniors at the high school, all 3rd year students in high school across the state of Nebraska, will be taking the ACT test. And so we will complete that on March 22nd for all of our juniors. During that day, we also do some other type of testing. Our 10th graders will participate in the pre-ACT. Our 9th graders will do math testing, and we will have our 3rd through 8th grade participate in the state MSCAS growth testing. We are moving from a single event in the spring type testing to a through-year testing model. Nebraska is breaking ground across the United States on this practice. Our kids will be able to take the test, part of it in the fall, part in the winter, part in the spring. So it's not a one and done. It'll give them a chance to, as they grow through the year, we'll see growth in their scores as we move through that. So that new test will be the model that students participate in this spring. And so that begins March 21st and will run through the first week in May as well. So lots of important things for our kids to be able to demonstrate their learning and do the other end of showing their great achievement and things. So that's my highlight for tonight. Any questions I can answer for you? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hoagie. Rounding out our administrative reports is the superintendent report. Dr. Hawk, your highlights.
Yes, several in there, but something that may not be a highlight and well applauded is the closing of 168th Street. 168th Street from basically Rachel Snowden Road to Military is scheduled to be closed shortly and should be opened up in time for school start. So contracted date is around August 8th, which is about a week before school starts. But they have to do some major construction just south of Military. They have to shave that hill down quite a bit. Now, the good side of that is some of that dirt, anywhere from 22 to 26,000 cubic yards, will go to the school and will sit between Woodney and the elementary. Some may go to a practice field to kind of lessen the slope on that as well. That'll be at a reduced cost. Obviously, the contractor wants to get rid of that dirt. It's easier close than far away. So we'll bring a change order if necessary to the board. So, but the other side of that is the very next year where the corner of 168th and State Street will be closed. That is a much more extensive construction and it's scheduled to close the road anywhere from 10 to 12 months. So we'll have to work on transportation because that is a artery, for buses to travel on. But that will receive less applause than any championship going through. So.
Any questions for Dr. Hawk? We will move on to committee reports then. I don't believe the curriculum committee met. They are pending some budget information, mostly around state aid, I believe. Property taxes, yes. Building and Finance did meet to review support staff salaries. So we'll be covering that a little later in this meeting. And we did discuss admin salaries. We'll have an exec session with the board to further discuss admin salaries, excluding the superintendent. Or that is, we will not be discussing superintendent salary, but building administration and district office administration in executive session. We also have been continuing to review the construction management at risk process for building the high school. I met with Derek Aldridge, who we've asked to come give the full board some highlights from that process, in particular the selection committee that goes along with hiring a construction manager for the district. Derek. Thank you.
Good evening. Derek Aldridge, Perry Law Firm. Here to talk to you, give you a brief overview of construction manager at risk, that process, and any questions the board may have on that process. So quickly, there's two basic methods to construct buildings in Nebraska. There is the traditional design to build method, and then there's this new method called construction manager at risk. Design bid build is a process that you use for quite a while in terms of building buildings. It's a statutory process. You have a couple of board policy and board procedure that talks about that. Again, it's the traditional method. It applies to any building projects in excess of $100,000. You award bids to the lowest responsible bidder. Construction manager at risk is also a statutory process. We do have a new board policy that was adopted last month. It's a 902.06. As Mark mentioned, this is a qualifications-based process rather than just taking the low bid, unlike the bidding process. One of the unique aspects of construction manager at risk is that the construction manager has the legal responsibility to deliver the project within an agreed upon guaranteed maximum price. So if, for example, construction prices accelerate and there aren't change orders or adjustments of that GMP, the construction manager gets stuck paying any costs that are above that GMP. If by chance construction comes in and less than the GMP, it just means that the school doesn't spend that money. It's not money that construction manager returns back. It's just money that's not spent by the school. Like design bid build, the construction manager is the contractor during the construction phase, or the builder during the construction phase. This is a request for proposals process, so we have a board policy that talks about what goes into the RFPs. It is a request for proposals process. We do have to publish in the newspaper. They have to be out on a quote street for at least 30 days after the RFP is issued. In addition to a newspaper publication, I also have a long list of construction managers in the state that I will directly email notice to make sure that they are aware that the school has a project that's going to be out there and they will have interest in. As Mark also indicated, this is a process where when you get proposals back, the first thing that the school has to do is refer those to a selection committee for evaluation. That selection committee is appointed by the board. It has a specific makeup required by state statute. There has to be at least one member from each of the categories listed above. So there's at least one board member, one member of administration, the project architect, and then two people who are really not at all related to the school. So there's one who's a quote construction expert, but again, it wouldn't be somebody who's employed by one of the proposers or wouldn't be employed by the district. And the other person is just a resident, just flat out a resident of the district. Again, not employed by the school or by any proposer that might be proposing for the project. The selection committee is going to evaluate and rank proposers based on criteria. The criteria are listed in the policy that was adopted last month, just not the weights. Okay, so there are 7 criteria. Here's 3 of them. Here are the other 4. And then one of the things that the board will do for each project is decide what the weighting is going to be for each one of those criteria within the range that the legislature allows us to do. So we get to pick that, the board gets to pick that for every project that they're working on. After ranking, the selection committee is going to make a recommendation to the board, and then the board takes action on that ranking to either accept or reject or do something else with that ranking. At that point, the school starts to negotiate with the highest ranked construction manager. If the school cannot negotiate a contract with that highest ranked CM, they can reject that highest ranked one and move down to the second highest ranked. As I mentioned to the Development Finance Committee, I had not ever had to do that until about maybe 3 months ago. I had to do it once, almost twice. So it is an opportunity, it is a hammer that the school has in their part of the negotiation process with construction managers. Some of the benefits of hiring a CM, you do hire the construction manager before that guaranteed maximum price is finalized, and it's negotiated as an amendment. Again, if the school cannot negotiate an acceptable GMP with that proposer, they can just terminate the contract and move on. I have not ever had that circumstance come up in the 10 plus years that I've been doing it. So I just have not seen that been something that comes up. Usually we find a way to negotiate GMP, alternate scope, whatever. So it's typically something that you can do. That's all I had. Were there any questions that the board might have on construction manager and that process I delivered? So again, you've adopted a policy, that's step 0, so to speak, on what we need to do. For moving forward on that.
I had 2 things. One, if you could highlight the reason why we're considering this type of proposal for the size and scope of the high school project. And 2, the advantage of having the construction manager on board early in the process to hopefully figure out some of those cost savings and other items as part of the build process to make it go more smoothly.
Great question, Allison. So, and those are a little bit interrelated. One of the things that I've seen over the years in schools that are doing CM is that bringing a construction manager on board before you've gotten too far in the design process and before maybe you've thought about sizing what a bond issue value might be. Construction manager can be very helpful in terms of cost estimating and constructability review. They can be working with your architect, in this case DLR, you can be working with them immediately to get a better handle on trying to get to ultimately what that bond issue ask is going to be. So sizing the bond, it can be helpful to get really good cost estimating information from construction managers, as well as constructability review, in terms of, you know, if you're looking for a building of a certain size, or is there the possibility that we're going to overload particular trades versus others? And they can be, the construction manager can be helping the architect, make sure that we're gonna go down a path to get very cost effective with it. In terms of the types of buildings that we see, I think we talked about this maybe several meetings ago. Elkhorn North was not a construction manager at risk project. Gretna East is a construction manager at risk project. Other metro schools doing this, Douglas County West is doing has done a couple of projects doing construction manager at risk. Their first one was an elementary school, which is probably on the smaller side of things. I would generally find that most high schools would be done by a construction manager at risk. I think the two newest Omaha public schools, high schools were done CM at risk. Lincoln Public is doing 2 new high schools CM at risk. So I think at that size and scope that you're talking about, a new high school, most in the state, I'm going to see CM at risk be the direction that most schools would go, something of that size.
Thank you. Those are two things that were helpful for me in committee discussions, so I'll make sure the rest of the board heard as well.
On the other side of that, what are the risks that we're changing and doing this instead? Or why would Elkhorn not decide not to go that way?
I don't know why Elkhorn did not, probably because they've never done construction management, so they just didn't have policies, and they didn't have necessarily a comfort level around jumping into construction manager. It is the best I can say on why they did. The risks, I mean, one of the things is compared to design bid build, where it's a very linear process. You just fully design your building, you go out and advertise for bids, and you wait for bid day to come in, and you get contractors, general contractors to give you a number, right? So CM at risk, you're gonna bring a construction manager on long before you've got that building designed and ready to be constructed. So there will be costs for that construction manager. You can ask them to do it for free. I don't recommend that you do that. To me, it just ends up with construction managers starting to pad fees on the back end to make up what they spend on the front end. And I think it's just much more transparent if you say, you're gonna come on and do some work for us to help us with sizing bond and so on and so forth, voter education, things like that. We're gonna pay you. So there's gonna be some money that you're gonna spend to do. Is it millions of dollars? No, it's not millions of dollars. Okay, but there is some money that you need to spend. If you can't get a GMP negotiated, no, certainly not. If a bond issue doesn't pass for whatever reason, you can terminate the contract. So you can get out of these things. You're not stuck having to build a building just because you hired it.
Being you asked that, I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's gonna cost from whenever we agreed to do this up to, say, bond issue, and then after that, it'll cost more. I mean, it gets bigger once the school gets through everything, am I right?
That's correct.
Okay, so I mean, it could be a smaller hourly wage to a big salary, I don't call it salary, but it'll be his pay for the whole time that the school's being built, so it could get large. It's a big project if it happens, so.
I have a couple of questions concerning just process, the selection process and things for this. I appreciate that you mentioned you can direct contact, in addition to issuing the RFP, you can direct contact individuals. Is there any concern about inadvertently missing potential construction manager in that process?
Absolutely. You have names you want to add to my list?
I don't, but just want to be kind of eyes wide open about that, but appreciate publicly issuing that. My next question is just concerning the criteria. Will there be a rubric around those and require documentation around each of those, I presume, within the RFP requirements? And will the committee be trained on that rubric prior to engaging on the analysis?
We have prepared a rubric, so we do have information that we have created on our own understanding, based on our understanding of what we think the criteria mean and what the legislature intended the criteria to mean. And I do have documentation that I typically provide to committee members to help them with that. I've never created or performed any separate training, but I'm certainly available to do that if it would be helpful. The criteria are not easy. If you look at the criteria, they are not easy criteria. They tend to overlap. There's a lot of flexibility is the term I guess I would use in how the criteria operate. And so certainly if the board thinks that training of, some special training for the committee members would be helpful, certainly we can provide that kind of training.
I really would. I think just from the standpoint of ensuring that everyone is sort of on the same page around how to apply those criteria in the evaluation process. Just as Tim said, big job and big role, so I think that would be helpful. I would appreciate this. That's all my questions.
Are there any other questions for Derek? Derek, thank you again. Again, I would say the board's aim, as it has always been in this process, is to build the best building we can at the best cost that we can. This is now our third meeting that we've discussed construction manager at risk. So want to make sure that the board's had plenty of time to evaluate this process and approach, because it is a new one for us and we want to make sure it meets those aims. So next step in this process is there are two things. The first is like to go about the business of determining who might sit on a selection committee. So Building and Finance Committee and let's say the board, in fact, is asking the superintendent to start working on what the composition of that selection committee would look like. There are a couple of community positions on that in the way of a construction expert and a resident. I would invite anybody in the public who has interest in serving on that selection committee to contact Dr. Hawk and let him know. And then we're going to have a special meeting in a couple of weeks. We do so in March, usually for open and option enrollment anyway. And so at that time, we will call the question, as it were, on the construction manager at risk process and decide whether we proceed with it at that time. So again, if you're interested in serving on that committee, please let Dr. Hawk know, I would say by early next week, so that we're prepared for the meeting on the 28th. Dr. Hawk, did you have any other?
No, I would agree with all you've said, and keep in mind that what you're looking for the 28th is to move forward with approving the RFP. There's still time to make decisions about construction management risk, but in a sense, we're moving forward with that process as we go down the road of a bond issue, probably looking at sometime in the general election in November.
And to that note, I would wonder about, since there are two community positions, one being the construction expert, might the other one also be knowledgeable in construction as well? And I wonder if we draw from even some of our alumni, like how are we going to find that person? I think it's important I appreciate that we're opening it up. If you know someone, if you're interested, spread the word. But I also believe that we have some alumni with expertise in such an area, as well as patrons and the Bennington Chamber of Commerce as well, to try and find those right people.
I understand that, but please keep in mind there are statutes around what that committee looks like. So.
Well, two community people, right? One construction expert
Fairly, yes.
and one a community member who
Correct.
may or may not.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's just my 2 cents, that second community member also maybe has some knowledge in that area.
We may be saying the same thing.
So certainly one will need an aptitude for reading long documents. So, With that, I think that concludes our committee reports, and we'll move on to construction report. Mr. Burke, do you have anything you'd like to share with us this evening?
Good evening, I'm Mike Berg with the DLR Group, and going through the 4 active projects that we have at this point in time. The middle school is going very well. We're actually enclosed in most of the building with roofing, and we're dried in. They're currently doing finishes in the classroom area, which includes the tile work in the bathrooms and painting throughout the building in all the classrooms. Skylights and everything are being drywalled. The science rooms have the casework and everything that are being segregated out and put in place as we go. The kitchen, the mechanical room, the generator room are kind of working their way to being able to install permanent equipment, doing mechanical, electrical overhead work and hookups. Site work around the area, if anybody's been over there, they are continuing to grade now that it's starting to get a little bit warmer, but as it gets warmer, then it gets muddy. So they're working through a lot of the different weather processes right now. Elementary number 5, as I call it, of course. They're continuing to work throughout the interior. The mason is inside, finishing up on a couple interior block walls in the kitchen, as well as some toning walls for the restroom areas. Mechanical duct work and electrical cable trays going down the hallways, getting the rough ends done. We have started the ceramic tile as of this week. It was on site last week, and the crew started basically today. So not a lot there other than piles of tile. So the glass has started going into the frames, starting on the north side, working around to the east and working around the building there. And the site work is basically nearly complete. However, the geothermal well just needs to connect its last piping to the building. So, high school stadium, charging stations have been installed. Grading continues to go. Casework and interior finishes are being done. The road project is a road project, but they're grading as the weather has started to turn, and they are prepping now for the last couple pours. They're scheduled to be done at the end of April.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Burke?
Charging stations. What?
Bus charging stations, basically at the bus barn for maintenance.
For diesel and engine.
Just for the,
Outside.
I get that, but I mean, what are you charging? You're just warming up the engines in the winter?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
that's
we
what I'm-
call them charging stations.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just like, so it's outlets that are just keeping your blocks.
Yes.
Okay.
We're not putting Tesla
So
stations.
I'm like, okay, so we're getting electric buses. Just making sure.
Maybe in the future.
There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Dr. Hockey, do you have anything else as it relates to construction?
I do not.
I would invite then Mr. Uckman to give the always informative technology report.
Thank you, guys. So most of you guys know me, Rob Eichmann, Coordinator of Technology Services. A little bit about our department. We continue to grow as we keep building new schools, almost changing. We are currently have a system administrator spot that is open up and listed. We're taking applications, trying to fill that one right now. And then we will have an additional IT associate who will be coming later this year as part of the proposals that were already approved by the board. So we'll look at bringing that one on late in the school year so that they can start to get ready and help us get everything ready for the new buildings. I always leave this one up here. It's one of my favorite quotes. It really has the idea of what my department looks at. It's not about the technology. It's about how we can put it in the teacher's hands and how it can affect the students, right? The technology should not drive what we're doing. So that's something that I always try to keep in the back of my mind as we're looking at what we're doing. So if we look at some recent projects, I was here in November. We've had a brand new website that's been built since then. We have completely replaced our entire printer fleet across the district. That's about 62 MFPs across, and then 3 very large ones that are in our print shop. We've had the construction projects going on like everybody else, wireless switches, box lights, audio, low voltage, security phones, and fiber WAN for both of the new buildings. So almost all of that has been ordered or is in the process of being installed. And some of them are dependent on other ones. So right now, middle school, they are almost done pulling the low voltage. This is your Cat 6 internet cable, things of that nature. They're going to be starting at the elementary next week with that. So as soon as they get all those done, we can start to put switches in, which then we can start to put wireless in, which then we can put phones and security in. So all of these are doing good. We are seeing a little bit of the delays with some of the other things. Some of our network switches were ordered in November of last year. We're supposed to get them sometime in April. So we're working with those vendors that kind of been, there are things coming down the pipe, but they're relaying or releasing them based on final project completion date. So we're continuing to work with our vendors on that to make sure that we've got everything in place to open the buildings up. The fiber WAN, this was approved last year. So these are the circle kind of depicts where the 2 new buildings are going. Unite is the one who won that. They do have fiber pulled onto those buildings, so we're just waiting to actually pull them into the building as some of these grading projects get a little further along before we bury cable underneath and have it busted up. So everything there is on track. We're in good shape there. So some of the upcoming projects that we have coming, we have a bid out right now for a fiber connection for the softball complex. That was part of what was agreed upon last year. So we're going through E-rate, which is our process of getting the 40% reimbursement on this. So that one closes here sometime next week. So you'll hear more about that bid next week. We've got network equipment to make sure that the softball complex can come online and be able to stream and do those things. Bennington Elementary, we've got a bid out right now for some low voltage and some wireless. That is the oldest wireless in the building. When that building was built, we had one in airport or AP, the things that actually give you your wireless. We have one for about every 4 or 5 classrooms. As we've kind of grown and put the one-on-one into place, we're seeing some areas in that building where it's not quite enough signal. So we're recommending that we go ahead and match that to all of the other buildings. We'll put 1 AP in every classroom. That way the kids and the devices continue to work well. Firewall, as we continue to grow, we do have a bid out. All of these ones that you see here are out for E-rate right now, so 40% reimbursement on them. As we continue to grow, we're kind of hitting the upper limits of what we're able to send outbound. So we are able to increase our bandwidth going out. Our current firewall has a limit of 1 gigabit, which is what we have, but moving into next year, we are moving to 2 gigs. So we'll double our capacity going out. This firewall is rated to go up to 10, so it'll give us some future growth in there as well. And then most of you guys have heard about the Chromebook replacement grant that we were given by the federal government. I'll show you kind of what some of that looks like and what that entails as we move forward. And then obviously opening up the 2 new buildings. So if we look at the fiber WAN that will be coming, what we're having bid is a connection that will actually go underneath the ground from the current press box at Badger Stadium over to the new press box at the softball complex. This will connect that one into the rest of our network, bringing them online, keeping up with the same capacity that every other building has. When we look at that ECF funding, some of what we look at next year. So we had 2,200 laptops that were paid for through the federal grant. Next year, we'll be looking at 24 new carts. Roughly 200 of those 2,200 were touchscreens. Those will be new devices for K-1. And then you see a number there, 3,118 Chromebooks, K-12. That's the number that we're looking at replacing for next year. So 2,200 of those are the ones that we got the grant for. The other 900 are the ones that we would typically buy in a normal year that comes out of our budget. That's all built into it. So that's grade 6 and grade 9. And then we have a couple hundred in there for the growth that the district comes. Unfortunately, ECF didn't allow me to cover those ones because those would have been planned purchases. This was replacement only on the other ones. Otherwise, I would have tried to go for all of them. So when we talk about, this is almost 2,200 laptops. So you see the 16 pallets that are at the warehouse right now, those are about 100 apiece. I've already got what would be this year's 10th grade because their HPs would be replaced as part of this. We've seen a lot of problems with them. So the junior class, if any of you guys are here, we just finished setting yours up on the last in-service day. That's how we spend all of our early releases and days is programming days. So we've got about the first 400 of those 2,200 unboxed, set up, and ready to go. So we'll start to deploy those yet this year as we move forward. Finally, I want to focus on a little bit of what's been going on with our technology integrationist. Ms. Mackenzie White, this was a position that we added last year during the proposals. So I really want to kind of give you an idea of working some of the things that she's been able to do. So this has all been since about the last time we spoke. She's been working with individual teachers. We've had some very dedicated trainings. So you'll see things like Pear Deck with K1. She sat down and worked with all of 5th grade and help them to revise their 13 colonies project, really hoping to bring that up a little bit level. So they focused on building with Google Sites and Google Earth and using that technology as she goes in there. She's done some things with Unite for Literacy with K through 2 and ELL teachers. She has started meeting with all of the librarians across the district, spending time with them, looking at how when they plan out their digital citizenship lessons, things like that, how we can better incorporate those. A few of the other ones, she's been doing some lunch and learns both at Bennington Middle School and Bennington High School. These are days where teachers can come in the library during the lunch breaks. They also have some kind of a little 10 or 15-minute presentation showing things that can be done. We try and highlight and work with teachers who are in those buildings so teachers can see how they're working already. It's been a very good way of kind of getting the foot in the door at some of those buildings. She worked with Heritage on their day of design, and then we've also expanded, and she's been working with some of our nutrition services, some of those kitchen managers, trying to help better some of those skills as we continue. So we're excited about how this is going. It's been a very good process for us. One other thing that I wanted to highlight, Mackenzie has been working with a couple other people. We are going to be hosting a kind of MiniNEA session, if you would. Here in the district, we're collaborating with OPS. Tony Vincent is going to be coming and speaking. This will be June 3rd. So it's still under teacher contract. We're right towards the end of those days. So we'll have a couple hundred educators coming on site here to continue to learn. We've got another one planned for August where we're going to be working and bringing in a representative from Boxlight to help give some additional training and best use practices as teachers come back around the time we do our boot camps in August. So it's a lot of information in a very short period of time, but I'm always happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Rob. Are there any questions for Rob?
I have only a comment that I love that we are hosting that NEA event with our OPS neighbors. I think that's awesome. A little familiar with Tony Vincent's work, but really appreciate the post that.
Thank you. I'm glad this is the one time a year you get attention when things go right. Thank you for your report, Rob.
They also come see us on the worst day, so we're happy with it.
Julia, just saw Julia Plucker arrive for her just-in-time lobbyist report.
We've got a full house, so I won't take as much time as they took on consent calendar today, which was 6 hours. So we just finished day 41 down at the legislature. We switched to all-day debate, so public hearings are over. We should be sailing through, but we're not. We filibustered every bill on consent agenda today. Consent agenda are not controversial bills that everybody's agreed to, but there's just a lot of hard feelings about some bills that have come up. A filibustered bill last week, which was constitutional carry. A gun bill got very personal. So the plan is for the next 2 weeks, we're going to talk about the budget and the ARPA recommendations. The ARPA recommendations came out from the Appropriations Committee at about 4 o'clock today, 3 o'clock. And I've yet to talk to anybody who's happy about the ARPA recommendations. I think everyone had a project that was left out of those. So I think it'll be a very interesting next 2 weeks as they start to debate each item that got put in the package and each item that got left out of the package. And then after that, we will move onto the rest of the priority bills that, of course, were designated. Today, we also, we did get to debating daylight savings time and the fact that they don't want to participate in daylight savings time anymore. It's kind of a tradition that they do it every Monday after the daylight savings time change, and that did advance. I don't know that they have the votes to take that to final reading, but it did advance first round, just out of, a fun fact about the legislature today. The forecasting board met, which is always a big deal to those of us who watch forecasts and how that might affect school finance and TIOSA. And the good news, we're $370 million more in projected tax receipts for 21-22 and $405 million more in 22-23. So our economy in Nebraska, that bodes well. It's thriving. Lots of money for the rainy day fund, so therefore there should be lots of money for TIOSA funding. We'll see. Same as when I came last month, I don't see any big changes on the horizon this session on funding. The one issue that keeps coming back like a bad penny is opportunity scholarships, which the public schools are not in favor of. It allows a tax credit for sending your child to a private school. That was defeated last year. It was defeated in the first week of the session. It was defeated as part of the governor's budget, and now it's on another bill that is advanced from Education Committee. Another bill 1273 was put on a committee priority package, and so we will deal with that bill again. I mean, it's crazy that that's gotten it'll have 2 full 8-hour debates in one short session. So we'll deal with that, and then other hot news from Education Committee I put on a report is LB 1218, which is a $5,000 bonus for a first-time teacher. So that does seem to have the legs to be able to pass the legislature. Any other questions that I can answer? Oh, I was talking really fast. I don't know.
Looks like there are none. Dr. Hawken, you have any?
No, within the lobbyist report, you also see bills of interest that is there for the board as well. And that is part of the packet for anybody in the public as well, if necessary.
And any questions on those bills at the meeting, please let me know and I can get you the stats of those. So thank you.
Sounds great. Thank you for your quick yet thorough synopsis.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowman.
Now we'll move to our spotlight report, which is about district accreditation.
Do I have the correct one?
Yes.
Our spotlight tonight is on our accreditation process and school improvement. We start out with a reminder that this process is one that we have to undertake in order to maintain our school district and schools open in it. Rule 10 sets all the criteria for operation of public schools. And so we must be accredited by the state or an larger organization. We have chosen through many, many years now to be part of the Advanced Ed or the North Central Association of Schools and Colleges. And now they have renamed themselves as they have expanded to COGNIA. And so we are accredited by COGNIA. They are an international organization that covers, I think it's almost 30 countries and thousands of schools, and set standards of expectation for high quality educational programs. So that is the process that we have been working on. We get a visit every 5 years where we will have a group come and meet with us and measure our progress against their standards. And so the cognitive performance standards, Dr. Tyndall will tell you more about and share with you, but that is one piece of the process. So we have been digging into those standards in school buildings with teachers on their in-service days, with the administrative teams, and measuring our input on where we are on those standards, and then gathering evidence of our progress on all of those. We also, as part of this process, will have many interview stakeholder groups. So we have invitations out right now to students, to parents, to the school board, to our administrators, to teachers, to our classified staff are also interviewed during this process. We have over 125 different people invited to the table to be interviewed during these 4 days that we will have visitors evaluating our school district. We have been gathering this documentation over a 5-year period, and it all stems from our strategic plan. And so all of the things that we've been working on and our growth have to be linked to that. And then what trickles down to our buildings and all the way to the classroom on how we do our work. So this process is very important to us. We get this visit as a dipstick on how our progress is once every 5 years. So Dr. Tyndall has been chairing this process through this year, and so she'll bring you up to date on our status.
Good evening, Shannon Tyndall, Assistant Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. So, like Dr. Hoagie has mentioned, we've been preparing for this for 5 years, and we're about 3 weeks out for the visit. And our review is going to be 5 days. It's happening April 3rd through the 7th. We have chosen, there's 2 ways you can go. You can go a school accreditation, but we've decided to go a system accreditation. So they'll look at our continuous improvement processes as a district as a whole. And there'll be 5 members visiting our district from April 3rd to the 7th, but it will be remotely. We didn't know COVID protocol at that time when we signed the contract and decided to go forward. So we decided that remote was best. A 5-team member will conduct the interviews and lots of processes all through Zoom. Part of the process when you do a system accreditation, there has to be out-of-state people involved in the process. So we'll have 2 out-of-state members, our chairs from Alabama, and then 3 in-state. 5 people will be part of the process. Like Dr. Hoagie mentioned, we will have over 125 interviews. We've sent invitations to everybody involved from the governing body, which is the Board of Education, superintendent, district, building level administration, school leadership teams, instructional staff, and students that are in the 3rd through 12th grade. We've invited plus parents. We've 6 weeks prior to the visit, we've had to submit artifacts to prove our continuous improvement and our work towards 31 standards under 3 domains, the leadership, learning, and resource domains. And finally, we're working on a video since they can't come to our district in person. Mr. Uckman and our tech department are working on a video, about 45-minute video to show our facilities and our construction and highlight the programs that are going on in our buildings. In front of you, I did lay a packet, and all the attachments in this are also printed within that packet, so you have that. After the 5 days of the visit on April 7th, the last afternoon on Thursday, April 7th, will be our conclusion, and this is when we'll find out some of the findings or what the recommendations of the committee is. We will invite staff, and we want to send an invitation to our Board of Education at 3:30 in the high school board auditorium. The head evaluator will give an oral report. This will be a very high level, just giving us strength and weaknesses they saw. And then a few weeks later, we will get a written report about their findings, and we will get 3 ratings on each standard. At the beginning level, which is called initiate, and then the middle level will be improve, and the standards that are embedded in our practices every day will get a level of impact. The process has kind of changed. If you have been through the process with us in the past, we had action we had to take. We may not get any action, and if you ask me, I perceive that we won't, hopefully. But the action will be required if they find insufficient evidence on any of the standards. What will we do with this report? The last step of the process, we will review and share it with all our stakeholders, communicate our findings out, and then we'll use those findings to continue our path of improvement in the areas they find are deficient. All right, what is the board's role in this process? Well, you play a very important role in this process. A lot of the standards are directly related to the work you do, and here are some of them. The first thing you do is you establish the policies that support effectiveness of our system. You adhere to a code of ethics and define roles and responsibilities that help move our district in the right direction. You know and support our mission, our vision, and our direction. You analyze a range of feedback and make improvement decisions based on that feedback of lots of stakeholders. You implement quality assurances for effectiveness and consistency, and you manage our resources to support our purpose and mission. So, what I'm asking of the board, you also received an invitation, and on Monday, April 4th at 11 o'clock, you will receive a Zoom link. We do definitely need 3 of you to participate, but we encourage all of you to participate if possible. You can do this from home. Like I said, I'll send you the Zoom link. Mr. Ackman or myself will help you if you've never participated in a Zoom kind of conference call. The board, if all of you participate or more than 3 of you participate, you'll be split into 2 interview groups so you don't have a quorum. And in front of you, and also linked to this, is some sample questions that I have sat on external review teams in other districts, and these are some of the questions that I have asked of boards in the past. The next thing you can do to prepare for this is know our vision, which is part of one of the documents that I provided you within our strategic plan. Also, the board has policy on educational beliefs. That is in that packet. And our multicultural education statement that we adopted in December is also part of that. So that's kind of the vision and the direction our business, our district, our system is going in. Do you need to memorize them? No. Just good information to familiarize yourself with. Also, our strategic plan, as you know, we have 4 goals, and in there are the initiatives we have conducted to support the attainment of those 4 goals. And the final thing is the district administration has sat, and for those 31 standards, we have identified all the evidence that we've submitted to the external visit team, and we have ranked ourselves in what we perceive as our strengths and weaknesses. So that document is also provided to you. What do we hope from this, and what do we want to gain? Well, we want an honest appraisal of our strengths and weaknesses. So we don't want to tell an unrealistic story of our district. We want to identify areas of growth. We know we are an excellent system. We have a rating of excellent, but there's always room for improvement in some of these standards. And so what we want to learn is, are we on track? Have we made progress and continue to make progress? And are we missing something? Sometimes when you're in the system, it's hard to look beyond where you're at. We want affirmation of our recommendations and recommendations from them for continuous improvement. And you can always learn from outside people. All this external team has expertise in the field of education, so we hope we can learn from them and their experiences. So basically, it isn't a show and dance. This is our reality, and we want to learn and improve. Any questions about the process?
I'll just say I appreciate the timeliness in getting the rankings out to us in advance. And if I heard you right, this was already submitted to the...
Yeah, it had to be submitted 6 weeks prior to the visit.
Looks good and
I'm valid.
Dr. Huck. Anything else?
I just echo what Dr. Dirks mentioned, just the preparation. I know that I have heard you all speaking very specifically about the work that needed to be prepared in advance of Cognia coming to our district. So really appreciate the thoughtfulness, the ahead thinking, and also the preparation for the board so that we can be well prepared to articulate. We know it is very strong, but I appreciate your work to help us to prepare to have great insights and be able to articulate that for the accreditation committee. So thank you for that work.
Good. And our building level principals put a lot of work with their staffs into this also, so we appreciate that.
Thank you, Dr. Tyndall and Dr. Hoagie. And not coincidentally then, a timely report on strategic goal 2.
My name is Therese Nelson. I'm the principal at Heritage. This is Jody Green. She's the assistant director of student services, and Matt Wilson, assistant principal at the middle school. And Danielle Robb also, who is the assistant principal at Baker Point, soon to be at Bennington Elementary. So we are your core personalized learning strategic planning team, and we are just going to real quick. This was a slide that we used in our last presentation, just as a review, a timeline of where we've been, and then where we would like to go.
Personalized learning is kind of seen as a whole enchilada. So there's 6 bubbles on the sides, but it encompasses so much more than that. We met with a committee of teachers and the leaders and had determined we're going to take just one piece of personalized learning. So rather than trying to eat the whole enchilada in one bite, really break it down into bits and pieces so we can better educate our staff, administrators, and teachers alike about what it truly means to personalize education. So after that meeting, from teacher input, which is what drove a lot of the decision, the focus is going to be specifically on differentiation, which is very much in the teacher's control. So we'll talk about next steps here in a second.
So why did we do this? We did this and took a look at where we've been and where we're headed, just to develop a better understanding of individualization versus differentiation versus personalization. We looked through a lot of different articles and a lot of research, and we decided let's just start with this one piece. Teacher input, they wanted more. As we gain so many new staff members each year, we wanted more on just this little piece of it. Differentiation is already embedded in what we already do as part of our staff evaluation process and really part of what teachers are doing every day. And differentiation impacts all students, whether you're offering enrichment lessons or intervention. So it really does impact everyone.
And our next steps coming up, we're going to have a meeting with those teachers that gave us input on kind of what they were looking for out of this, and coming up with what our next steps are and how do we get professional development to all teachers in the district. How do we do professional development with administrators so everyone's kind of on the same page? What are we looking for with differentiation with our students? What is our district's kind of definition of this is what we view as differentiation when you walk into a classroom? So it's kind of laying that groundwork for our next steps and really getting those teachers' input on how we get there. Thank you. Questions?
I just have another thank you comment and maybe a rhetorical question that doesn't need an answer today. But I'm curious about how this dovetails, overlaps, weaves, integrates with our multicultural and diversity statements. And looking at that word differentiation and maybe not redefining it in such that it's unique to the multicultural and diversity and inclusion plan, but that those pieces fit well together. So thank you.
I believe that concludes all of our reports, and we are ready to forge ahead to unfinished business. And leading off unfinished business are several change orders. Dr. Hawk, could you brief us on those?
Correct, yes. There's 3 minor change orders and 1 large one. The large one did take a little time. Because it was over $100,000, I thought it best to get more than 1 bid into that. And so we did secure 2 bids, and it took time to get that second bid in line with all of the requirements for construction. Once we did, they were within 10% of each other. We're recommending that the change order be done by the general contractor. Once it's approved this evening, that will move forward, and that will be we believe that's a 4 to 6 week timeline. Thus, it will be done sometime in May. Hopefully, not too much trouble for our youth program that will use that field. But there are 4 change orders, one of which is large, and that is the motion before this evening.
So move to approve all items listed for construction, ES number 5, MS number 2, and high school site expansion project change orders for a cost of $167,442.80.
Thank you, Tim. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Allison. Questions or discussion?
Could I ask, who was the other, or who actually got the job for the softball dugout?
It's a contractor that's doing the site improvements now, so that would be Midwest. And I always get the letters, but I think it's DMC.
Yeah.
DCM.
And that starts in May?
No, it will be completed in May. It starts probably tomorrow.
Okay.
Any other questions? Jody, please call the roll.
Valerie,
Yes.
Kara,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Tim.
Yes.
Motion carries. Now the fixture of unfinished business, our return to work plan, Dr. Hogan.
Our return to school update, we're hopeful that this may be our last report for you, as things seem to be stabilizing at this time. So to highlight changes in our plan, the only area that we have any change for you tonight to report is on school operations. No changes here. The story of COVID this school year, as you can see, each week since January, we have, since January 5th to this week, we have 0 cases reported during this past week as positive cases. So we have had considerable change over the last several weeks. Our protocols have not changed at all at this point. What we will move forward with will be that we are no longer going to require masking in our elementary classrooms when there is a positive case. It is very rare that there is contact between students who are sick in school. Parents have been extremely responsible in quarantining their own kids if they have been exposed, and I'll share those numbers with you as well. But overall, we have found that that element of safety should not be needed, and we are one of the few school districts that are still following that procedure. And so our plan is to stop masking kids if there's one case in class. We will continue to notify families should that happen, but we've just modified that use of the masking. So our protocols as well, the only change is that masks are recommended through day 10 rather than required in our elementary. Our protocols have not changed at all. Our symptom checks have not changed either at this point. We have our clubs slowly rolling back into the elementary buildings. Our activities at the high school are fully operational. We are continuing our seating charts should we have an outbreak so that we can document things. We have supported the vaccine efforts by hosting vaccine clinics when we were asked by the Douglas County Health Department. Our protocols, again, have not changed except recommending masks if people have been exposed. As I mentioned earlier, as parents have kids that have been exposed to someone who's been sick, we have very few kids that we have to send home because of having symptoms at school. Where at the height this school year, back in September, we were still only having to send home a few dozen kids who were showing signs and symptoms because parents were making that decision at home and taking care of that for us. But you'll see this past February, 70 students, parents kept them home because they were of an exposure. We had 7 students across the district we had to send home because of appearing to have symptoms. So overall, we feel like we've seen a real nice dip and people seem to be healthy at this point. So we're pleased with that process. So next steps, we are recommending that we can discontinue this monthly report because of the stability of where we have been for the last several months. If something would happen or a change happens within our community, of course, we would update things. We would work with the Douglas County Health Department should we need to change any of our protocols at this time and to bring that to your attention and continue to keep our website up to date with those information. No changes on our other processes that have been going on with our early dismissal times, as well as documenting that absenteeism and making sure that students have academic supports as needed. So our ESSER 3 funding, we hope to start using some of those funds for grades 6 through 8 English language arts adoption that we are almost nearing a selection on, and then to continue over the next 2 years of replacing English language arts materials as part of that funding. So, and we are always accepting feedback on that use of that grant funding. So what questions can I answer for you at this time?
I have just one, Dr. Hoagie, and it's concerning the federal free and reduced price lunch program. Is there any indication of what's happening, or do we already know what's happening for 22, 23?
We just put that, we will be putting it in Friday notes. We were just notified this week that the free meal program will no longer be subsidized. And so we'll be returning to typical school lunch processes. So next month is typically the month that we have your nutrition services report and what school lunch prices will be set at that time and milk prices. So that news shall be happening at our next board meeting in April, but we will be returning to typical school lunch processes, and we will put that out in Friday notes this week.
That's unfortunate to hear. Going on record, I think that was one of the best and most important decisions in or outside of a global pandemic. So I'm sorry to hear it, but thank you for helping us know.
Yes, absolutely. We have had many students take advantage of those meals every day.
Other questions? I don't have a question, but I do have a reflection. Since it's musical week, my recollection is that 2 years ago this week is when we started these conversations. And as you noted in your report, and as we noted then, managing through this was necessarily going to be a partnership between the district and the community. And there have been many, many struggles along the way. But I think our community has a lot to be proud of in how it's kept kids in school and worked with each other to, again, to manage through a very difficult situation. So I am hopeful that this is the last time we've heard from you, although on this topic at least. If it's not, I get it, but thank you, Dr.
Absolutely.
With that, we'll begin our new business with discussion on the replacement of HVAC equipment at the high school. Dr. Hock, can you provide us some background?
Correct. We
If you remember, back in August and September, we put monies in the general fund for replacement of the two chillers. They are approaching life end, and it's best that we make this repair now before they do end life. If they were to do so, we're not sure when that equipment would get here. Most equipment of this size would be anywhere from 8 to 16 weeks out. So therefore, it's much better on the environment, much better on school if we plan this as opposed to do it on an emergency basis. The line item in the budget was $500,000. As you'll see, it's closer to $600,000. There was a second bid, as again required by policy. That second bid was slightly under this bid. However, that second bid did not have all of the components. In particular, it did not have the coordination of controls. It's obviously necessary to put two large pieces of equipment on site, but you must have them as part of the computerized controls to cooperate and work with the machinery of the rest of the district. So, second bid was not void. However, it was less because of those controls. We make the recommendation as administration, meaning coordinator of district facilities and myself, to go with MMC for this project. This project will be done this summer and will allow the building to open this fall or August 17th.
Thank you, Dr. Hawk. I move to authorize the superintendent to enter into an agreement with MMC to upgrade the HVAC at the high school at a cost not to exceed $600,000.
Second.
Thank you, Allison. Is there discussion or are there questions on this topic? Hearing none, Jody, please call the roll.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes, motion carries. Our next item for discussion is support staff compensation for the 2022-23 year. Dr. Hawk, can you give us background on this item?
Yes, hourly staff, whether it's school, whether it's private, whether it's public sector, has been hit hard by wage increases and lack of employees. Therefore, we made a move as a district back in February to increase current wages anywhere from 50 cents to $1. And we are recommending that we continue with that, increasing some of those hourly staff by an additional $1 next August. And some of those will go up anywhere from 50 cents or higher. And then, as you can see, larger ones would be coordinators at 4%. I do want to point out that there is a, let me get back to that. We do have a scale, and that scale, as pointed out, has raised $2 in many cases from last year to next August. So there is a scale for building secretaries. There are differences in secretaries at times, particularly financial responsibilities. We have van and bus route drivers. We have paraprofessionals, and there are really two categories in that regard. Those that are general, as we call that, others that have health duties and special ed, bilingual, and preschool duties. We have food service, and there are differences in terms of the hours and in terms of the responsibilities. 12-month hourly district administration, those that are in maintenance do not have a scale, but they are compared with like jobs in the area and with like jobs in the district. So support staff as a whole will be increased from last year to next year close to 10%, 9.9%. The administration has worked with the Building and Finance Committee to review this. It is the recommendation of the administration that we move forward with the proposal this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Hawk, and as Dr. Hawk said, it would be the recommendation of the Building and Finance Committee as well. If the board adopt that plan.
You wait for a motion.
I am.
I so move to approve the 2022-23 salary and benefit proposal for support staff as presented.
Thank you, Jeff. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Allison. Questions or discussion? Again, the board has, and the committee has discussed this at length a couple of times. I just wanted to thank Lynn Lurvy for the time she spent gathering information in support of this to make sure we had good information to make a decision on this. So, if there is no other discussion, Jody, please call the roll.
Valerie?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Motion carries. Now we will take up discussion on wireless access points, low voltage cable, network switches, firewall for new construction and upgrades. Dr. Hawk.
I won't go into detail on each one of these. Some of these are bond approved, some of them are for new buildings. Some of them are just simply replacements. Network switches as an example. This is for, I believe, Bennington Elementary. Mr. Evans?
The network switch is for the softball complex.
Excuse me. Wireless access points.
Bennington
Elementary, excuse me, my apologies. But all of these and the firewall is a district level purchase. All of them have been out for E-rate approval. All of them have received bids. We make the recommendation that these move forward this evening.
I move to authorize the superintendent to enter into an agreement with the following vendors to provide firewall, wireless access points, network switches, and low voltage cabling for Bennington Public Schools, Bennington Elementary, and the softball complex facilities as presented. The first is wireless access points with Prime at $13,000 plus. Network switches also with Prime at $905. Low voltage cabling, a voice and data system at $7,000 and change. Firewall with Sterling at $83,909.41.
Thank you, Valerie.
I'll second.
Thank you, Karen. Discussion. Jody, please call the roll.
Kara?
Yes.
Heather? Yes. Mark?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Motion carries. Now on to the purchase of transportation equipment. Again, Dr. Hawk.
Yes. One negative with this is it doesn't come with an equipped driver. However, we are looking to replace some of our fleet, and we're also looking to expand our fleet. Mr. Edens has been very good to secure bids for those things that have been out on lease. They are slightly used, but with that diesel engine, they last us a very long time. So we are making a recommendation that the Bluebird All-American 78 passenger bus from Nebraska Central Equipment. This is a slightly used at 56,000 miles. And one of the things I'd like to point out is the participation. And this has held very steady over the years, anywhere from 20 to 25%. It usually hangs around that 21 to 23% of our student body takes advantage of transportation. It would be something that the Building and Finance Committee should look at, in that we have not looked at the cost that our patrons pay for transportation for quite some time. And that is something that I think is necessary as we continue to transport anywhere from 20 to 25% of our populace. We make a recommendation to approve the motion before you.
Thank you, Dr. Hawk.
I move to authorize the superintendent to enter into an agreement with the following company for the purchase of an off-lease bus as presented, a 2016 Bluebird All-American 78-passenger bus from Nebraska Central Equipment for $79,000.
Thank you, Karen. Is there a second?
Second, from now.
Thank you, Mel. Discussion.
Is this one of our biggest buses? What size compared?
78 passenger is the largest we have. We have one at 80.
Yeah, 284.
Is it got under storage underneath? And it's just a regular bus?
This is
No.
the route bus.
Okay. That's what I was curious.
So it's not an activity bus.
Yep, that's what I'm making sure.
And then I usually ask this question every time we buy a bus because they're off lease. But presumably evaluate new equipment versus this equipment. I know we've seen value in taking this route, but could you speak to where you think that?
I'm assuming you want that from Mr. Edens?
Well, I was looking at him, yes.
I did get bids on new buses just to see where they're at, and they're ranging in $135,000 to $145,000 for a similar new bus.
I think what we look at as much as anything, certainly the seats and the condition of the exterior, interior, but as much as anything, it's the Cummins engine. And we've had very good success with that Cummins diesel engine.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Edens or Dr. Cobb? Jody, please call the roll.
Heather? Yes. Mark?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Our last item of new business is an executive session. I move to have board go into executive session at 7:28 for the purpose of a strategy session with respect to administrative compensation and potential land acquisition as an executive session is clearly necessary for the protection of communities.
I'll second.
Thank you. As I mentioned before, the discussion on administrative compensation did not include a discussion on superintendent compensation, and the board does not expect to take action upon its return. Jody, please call the roll.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Valerie? Yes. Kara?
Yes.
Heather? Yes. Mark?
Yes. We're now moving to executive session, but I want to congratulate the students who attended this evening. An hour and a half is on the short end, so you can brag to your fellow students that you hit the right meeting to go to. Our next regular meeting will be Monday, April 12th, and we are tentatively planning a special meeting for Monday, the 28th, for purposes of open enrollment, instruction management, and metrics. Sorry, March 28th. Thank you. For the special.
Yes.